A king has 7 days to outrun a serpent, and on the last evening, even the palace begins to feel nervous. Every doorway is guarded, every window is watched, every basket is searched, and still somewhere beyond the walls, Takshaka is coming. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're inside Hastinapura on the final day. The heat sits low and heavy over the palace roofs. Lamps burn even in daylight, their ghee scent mixing with sandalwood smoke and the faint sharpness of copper vessels washed again and again. Priests have been chanting since morning. Their voices rise and fall like river water over stone. Sunset is still some hours away. That matters. You can feel everyone measuring time without admitting it. A guard glances toward the western sky. A servant freezes when a rope on the floor looks for one unkind moment, a little too much like something alive. Another man refuses to carry a garland because it trails behind him. Sensible, honestly. This is not the day to trust anything long and coiled. At the heart of the palace, in a high chamber ringed with watchful men, sits King Parikshit. He is no ordinary ruler. He is the last bright thread of the Khandava line, grandson of Arjuna, heir to a kingdom won through fire, vows, ashes, and 18 days of ruin on Kurukshetra's plain. Long before this afternoon of guarded doors and nervous priests, the world had already spent itself making him. Heroes had fallen, queens had wept, great bows had gone silent. And after all of that, after so much loss, one child had remained. That child is now a king with a curse on his head. You stand near one of the carved pillars and watch the chamber breathe around him. White parasols hang motionless. Silk banners stir only when the fan-bearers move. Gold cups gleam on a low table, untouched. Nearby, brahmanas sit cross-legged on woven mats, murmuring sacred sounds into the warm air. Their foreheads are marked with sandal paste. Their eyes are grave. No snake should be able to come near this place. That is the whole point. The guards at the outer gates inspect carts, bundles, offerings, baskets, fruit, flowers, firewood, even the hems of robes. Spears flash at every entrance. Messengers are stopped 3 times before they can deliver a word. The palace has become a fortress against scales and venom. It is the ancient royal version of checking under the bed, except the bed has pillars, guards, priests, and enough incense to fumigate a small forest. And still, no one is at ease. Because the danger has a name. Takshaka. It moves through the halls in whispers, not shouted, never shouted, breathed from mouth to ear like something hot and unwelcome. Takshaka, lord among Nagas. Takshaka, who does not crawl like an ordinary creature through kitchen ash and cracked walls. Takshaka, who comes with memory, with rank, with purpose. Outside, the city waits under the sun. Hastinapura's streets are crowded, but not with festival joy. People stand in doorways. Merchants speak softly over their trays of lentils and oil. Water sellers pause with clay jars balanced against their hips. Temple bells ring in the afternoon haze, and every sound seems to travel farther than usual, as if the city itself is listening for one small hiss beneath the ordinary music of the day. Children are kept indoors. Mothers tie charms at thresholds. Old men in shaded courtyards remember older curses. You can almost smell the river beyond the city, that cool, wet scent threading through the dust and cattle smoke. But here in the palace, the air is drier, tighter. It tastes of ritual fire and waiting. Parikshit sits upright, but the waiting has touched him too. 7 days ago, he had heard what was spoken over him. A sage's son, blazing with anger, had sent forth a terrible promise. Before the seventh sunset, Takshaka would strike. Since then, the kingdom has done what kingdoms do. It has organized, fortified, summoned wise men, posted guards, banned every creeping thing from every chamber. Once men begin giving orders, they always feel a little better, briefly. But time does not tremble before orders. You watch the king's face in the lamp glow. He is not old. That somehow makes it worse. There is strength in him, and royal bearing, and the fatigue of a man who has spent 6 days hearing reassurances from people whose own hands shake when they lift a cup. One minister swore no serpent could pass the palace defenses. Another promised that mantras woven through the halls would turn away all poison. A third likely recommended more guards, because when in doubt, kings and courtiers both enjoy adding guards. If one anxious soldier is good, 50 must be excellent. Yet the chamber remains uneasy. A fly circles the rim of a brass bowl. Somewhere down the corridor, anklets sound and vanish. The chant continues. You step closer to the open lattice and look out across the palace terraces. The stone is warm, even in shade. Pigeons crowd the eaves. Far below, elephants shift their weight in the royal enclosure, their chains clinking softly. In another age, these walls sheltered men like Yudhishthira and Bhima. Krishna himself once moved through halls like these, smiling as if he already knew how all things end. Arjuna's grandson now waits where giants once stood, and the enemy coming for him is not an army, not a rival king, not a siege engine or a rain of arrows. A serpent king. That is the wonder of it. After the Great War, after celestial weapons and chariot duels, and vows that shook kingdoms, the fate of the last heir has narrowed to this: a curse, a sunset, and something scaled, moving nearer. Who is Takshaka, that even kings speak his name carefully? You will go back for that. You will feel the ash-cool silence after Kurukshetra. You will see a child guarded like the final ember of a sacred fire. You will stand at Khandava when the forest burns so fiercely that sky and smoke become one. You will descend where the Nagas keep their jeweled halls in the cool dark under the earth. You will ride with Parikshit on the hot, unlucky hunt that turns hunger and pride into insult. You will sit through the 7-day countdown as every protection grows thinner by the hour. But for now, remain here. In the guarded chamber, in the humming heat, the priests are still chanting, the lamps are still steady, the guards still believe a wall is a wall and a door is a door. Sunset has not yet come. The king still breathes easily enough. On a silver tray nearby, fruit has been placed for inspection. Nothing seems amiss. That is how these evenings begin. And somewhere on the road to Hastinapura, or perhaps already nearer than anyone dares imagine, Takshaka comes on. Before Takshaka ever comes near a palace, there is a child in the ashes. So go back. Back past the guarded chamber. Back past the fruit basket and the whispered curse. Back to a world that has just survived the Great War and does not yet know what to do with itself. Kurukshetra is quiet, not peaceful, quiet. There is a difference, and you can feel it the moment you step onto that vast plain. The wind moves across broken chariots and snapped standards. The earth is dark and trampled. Crows hop where kings once stood, glittering in armor. Far off, funeral fires send up thin grey columns that blur into the evening sky. The smell reaches you first. Ash, damp soil, old smoke, burnt ghee from rites hurriedly performed, and the bitter iron scent of a battlefield that has taken too much. 18 days. That is all it took. 18 days for grandsires to fall, for teachers to fall, for brothers, sons, rivals, friends, and almost every boastful young prince with perfect teeth and a favorite horse to vanish into memory. The war that had been building for generations ended in less than 3 weeks, and afterward, the silence felt larger than the noise. In Hastinapura, victory did not arrive like festival drums. It arrived tired. The palace corridors were full, but no one hurried. Silk rustled softly, anklets barely chimed. Servants walked with lowered eyes. Lamps burned in niches through the night, and the oil smelled faintly sweet, but the sweetness could not cover grief. Every chamber held it, every courtyard, every doorway. The widows came in waves. They came with loosened hair and dust on their hems. They came clinging to children, too young to understand why everyone was whispering. They came looking for names, for scraps of certainty, for one person kind enough to lie gently. Smoke from the funeral grounds drifted over the city at dawn and at dusk, settling into fabric, into hair, into the carved beams of the palace roofs. You could stand in one of those long stone halls and hear nothing but bangles knocking together as a woman covered her face. The Pandavas had won the kingdom, wonderful, a kingdom full of empty seats. Yudhishthira, eldest of the 5, sat on the throne at last, and the throne felt heavier than iron. He had wanted justice. He had gotten justice the way men get rain in a flood. Too much, too late, ruin attached. Bhima still breathed like a storm and walked like a man who could break a door by accident. Arjuna still carried the shine of old greatness around him, though even that was dulled now, as if war dust had settled into his very skin. Nakula and Sahadeva moved through the palace with quiet discipline, beautiful and grave, like twin flames shielded from wind. And Krishna, dark, smiling, unreadable Krishna, was still there then, the one man in any room who seemed to know exactly how much sorrow the world could hold. But even he did not laugh much in those days. The women of the house had their own griefs. Kunti had outlived too much. Draupadi had seen her sons fall. Subhadra carried a sorrow so sharp it seemed to make the air around her thin, because Abhimanyu was gone. And once you bring Abhimanyu into the room, everyone else shifts aside. He had been young, too young really, sent into an impossible place by men old enough to know better. He had gone into the war, bright as a torch. He had the quickness of Arjuna, the Yadava blood of Krishna's line, the confidence of someone who still believed the world might reward courage fairly. The world did not. He fell in the wheel of battle, surrounded, cut off, brave to the very end. And when the war ended, his name was still warm on everyone's lips. But Abhimanyu had left something behind, or rather, someone. His wife Uttara was still alive, and she was carrying his child. That one small life became the center of everything. You can feel how the palace changes around that fact. Hope begins moving carefully through the rooms like a servant carrying a full bowl of milk, trying not to spill a drop. No one says too much aloud. People in grief become superstitious very quickly. They look at one another and speak in half sentences. They light extra lamps. They offer flowers. They ask the Brahmanas for blessings. They keep watch over Uttara as if the future itself were resting in her breath. And in a way, it was, because the great line of the Pandavas had narrowed down to an unborn child. That is how dynasties narrow to a single breath. People speak as if kingdoms are stone. They are not. They are one fever, one arrow, one bad decision, one child not yet born. Uttara moved through those days like someone wrapped in both care and fear. She had lost her husband before she had really finished learning his face. She carried his air under her heart. Women attended her constantly. Older hands arranged her cushions, brought her cool drinks scented with cardamom, rubbed fragrant oils into her hair, tied protective threads at her wrists. The rooms around her smelled of sandalwood paste, warm milk, neem smoke, and flowers left too long in shallow bowls. Outside, the kingdom was trying to heal. Inside, everyone listened for the future. But the war had one last cruelty in it. Ashwatthama, son of Drona, wild with rage after all that had happened, did not let the night end gently. In the darkness after the war, he loosed a terrible weapon, a force meant to wipe out the last seed of the Pandavas. Not on the battlefield, not against armored men, against the unborn. That is the kind of thing war becomes when it has burned through honor and kept going anyway. The danger rushed unseen, fierce and blazing toward the child in Uttara's womb. And suddenly, the women's apartments, with their lamps and soft cloth and guarded modesty, were no safer than Kurukshetra had been. Uttara ran to Krishna. You can see her in that moment, hair loosened, ornaments slipping, terror making her faster than dignity. She threw herself before him and begged for one thing only: save the child. Let the line survive. Let there be one life left from all this ruin. Krishna heard her, and Krishna, who had guided chariots through storms of arrows, now turned his power inward into the hidden darkness of a mother's womb. No one in the palace saw exactly what happened. They only felt the change, a stillness, a pressure in the air, priests pausing mid-chant, lamps flickering though there was no wind, Uttara clutching herself with white knuckles, the sense that something vast had entered a place too small for it. Inside her, the child was touched by destruction and by protection in the same breath. The force sent to end him came blazing in. Krishna's grace stood in the way. The child survived. That was the miracle people repeated for years afterward in softened voices. The boy had been tested before birth. He had looked upon divinity before he had even seen the sun. He had been scorched by destiny and spared. And because of that, when he was born, they named him Parikshit, the tested one, the examined one, the child who had already passed through fire before drawing his first breath. When he came into the world, the whole palace seemed to exhale. You can almost hear it. The cries of women turned from fear to relief. Conch shells were blown. Priests recited blessings. Ghee lamps shone brighter against polished walls. Fresh garlands were hung at doorways. Gold vessels clinked. Rice was scattered. Nurses wrapped him in soft cloth. Old women peered at his face and immediately began declaring which ancestor he resembled most, because no royal birth is complete until 10 people confidently disagree. One swore he had Abhimanyu's brow. Another insisted the child had Arjuna's eyes. Someone else probably claimed Bhima's grip before the poor baby had held anything except a finger. For the first time in a long while, the palace sounded alive. The smell of mourning did not vanish, not completely. Grief had soaked too deep into the stone for that. But now it mixed with other scents: fresh butter, incense, saffron, lotus garlands, and the clean, warm smell of an infant bathed and oiled and passed from loving arm to loving arm. You are standing in that chamber when they bring him out. He is very small. That is always the surprise, with heirs and saviors and children on whom entire dynasties depend. You expect thunder. You get a sleepy face, a soft head, and fists no bigger than figs. And yet, everyone looks at him as if a kingdom has been handed back to them. Parikshit grew in a house crowded with legends and thinned by loss. He would never know the old world as it had been. He would know it the way children know vanished splendor, through stories, through careful silences, through the way adults stop speaking when certain names are mentioned. He was raised among the survivors. Imagine that. Your grandfathers are not merely old men by the fire. They are Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva. Your grandmother is Draupadi, who has looked into flames and walked through humiliation and come out straight-backed. Krishna visits, and every room changes when he enters. Old warriors bow to him. Women smile despite themselves. Even the parrots in the courtyard seem to go quiet, as if they too know someone important has arrived. And yet, for Parikshit, all of them belonged partly to the world before him. He was loved deeply, that is true. But he was also born into the long shadow of men, so famous they could hardly fit inside memory. Ordinary memory, at least. A child in such a house does not merely learn to walk. He learns among echoes. Every pillar in Hastinapura seemed to remember something grander than the present moment. In the training yards, old instructors would one day watch him hold a small bow and blink as if seeing another hand on another morning. In council halls, ministers would lower their voices and speak of policy, tribute, grain, roads, and border disputes, but always with one eye on the boy who carried the dynasty's final thread. The city loved him because it needed him. The palace loved him because without him, the line ended, and children, even royal ones, can feel that kind of weight before they know its name. You can see him as a small boy in the courtyards of Hastinapura. Morning sun warming the stone, pigeons strutting along parapets, the smell of wet earth after the servants have sprinkled the dust, a nurse calling after him, tiny sandals slapping against polished floors. He chases peacocks. He grabs at jeweled scabbards he is absolutely not supposed to touch. He asks difficult questions in the clear voice only children possess. Where is my father? Why does grandmother cry when the drums sound? Why does everyone go quiet when Uncle Arjuna stares at the sky? Children are merciless that way, not cruel, just direct. And the adults around him had to answer somehow. So they told him what they could. They told him Abhimanyu had been brave beyond reckoning. They told him the Kurus were mighty. They told him his ancestors were protectors of Dharma. They told him he came from men who stood firm when the earth itself seemed to shake. They did not tell everything at once. No child needs the full Mahabharata before breakfast. So he learned in layers. He learned from lullabies first, then from court recitations, then from old warriors who had seen too much and yet still smiled when the prince climbed into their lap. He learned from seeing scars, from hearing names spoken with reverence, from noticing that some victories made grown men sad. Yudhishthira was gentle with him. That mattered. The king, who had once gambled away everything, now watched a child stack carved wooden animals on the floor and treated that tiny arrangement as if it were statecraft of the highest order. He had seen what happens when a house tears itself apart. With Parikshit, he held the future more softly. Bhima loved him in his own way too, huge and overwhelming, likely lifting the child onto one massive shoulder while every nurse in the palace nearly fainted. Bhima was the kind of elder who could terrify enemies and spoil children in the same afternoon. Arjuna, though, Arjuna was different. Parikshit was Abhimanyu's son. Every time Arjuna looked at the boy, memory came with him. You can imagine those moments in the late afternoon when the heat eases and the courtyards go gold. Arjuna watching the child trying to grip a toy bow, watching him laugh, watching him turn his face in profile and suddenly resemble the son who never came home. There are griefs that soften people. There are griefs that hollow out a chamber in the heart and leave it ringing forever. Arjuna carried both. Subhadra, grandmother now, kept especially close to the boy. For her, he was not just the kingdom's heir. He was Abhimanyu returned in another shape, not the same, never the same, but near enough to warm her hands around. Uttara too held him with a fierce tenderness that comes from having nearly lost everything before it even began. And Krishna, while he remained in the world, looked on. There is a sweetness in those years, but it is a careful sweetness. The kingdom had order again. Sacrifices were performed. Petitioners came and went. Horses stamped in the royal stables. The Ganga flowed beyond the city walls, broad and patient under white morning mist. Market lanes filled with sesame, grain, clarified butter, dyed cloth, copper pots, mangoes in season, and gossip in every possible direction. Life, shameless thing that it is, kept going. You can stand on a balcony above Hastinapura and feel hot wind carrying the smell of river mud, frying sweets, oxen, jasmine garlands, and sun-warmed brick. Beneath you, traders argue, children chase dogs, and somewhere a temple bell rings with such steady calm that for a moment it feels as if the war happened in another age entirely. But in the palace, memory never slept. The old heroes were still there, yes, and that was its own strange sorrow. Parikshit was not orphaned in the ordinary way. He was surrounded by love, instruction, and power. Yet he grew among people who were all, in one fashion or another, haunted. Their greatness was real. So was their weariness. They had won the world and discovered that winning does not sow the dead back into it. For a child, that creates a loneliness difficult to name. Everyone is watching you. Everyone is protecting you. Everyone is remembering someone else while they do it. He became, from his earliest days, a vessel for continuance. That sounds grand. It is also a lot to put on a small pair of shoulders. As he grew, priests studied signs around him. Elders noted his habits. Astrologers looked up at the sky, frowned in concentration, then said things measured enough to sound wise and vague enough to avoid blame. The prince would be strong. The prince would be righteous. The prince would carry the line forward. The prince would be tested. That last one was almost unavoidable, given his name. And Parikshit, by all accounts, had a searching nature. Some said he looked closely into every face, because somewhere in the dim chambers of infancy he still remembered the divine presence that had saved him in the womb. He examined the world as if trying to find that radiant protector again. A beautiful thought, also a slightly exhausting habit for the adults around him, because children who stare solemnly into your soul before asking for sweet cakes can be unnerving. Still, the years moved. He passed from cradle to courtyard, from courtyard to lessons, from lessons to the first early disciplines of a prince. He learned respect for Brahmanas, care for subjects, the handling of horses, the language of kingship. He learned the names of ancestors as other children learn constellations. And beyond all that, beyond the soft rooms and stern teachers and loving elders, destiny was already walking its own road. Far from Hastinapura, other memories were alive. Old fires had not gone out. Old losses had not forgotten themselves. In hidden places beneath roots and rivers, names were still being remembered. Takshaka was not yet at Parikshit's door. Not yet. Parikshit was still a boy in a palace of survivors, running under carved beams while old women called him back, lifting his face to listen to tales of men he could never fully know, growing toward a throne built from triumph and sorrow in equal measure. But the world he had inherited was not clean. It had ashes in it. And when a child is born from ashes, sometimes the fire is only sleeping. But curses do not begin in a single afternoon. Long before Parikshit sealed his windows, there was a forest burning bright as the end of the world. The day is hot even by summer standards, not pleasant heat, not lazy palace courtyard heat. This is the kind that sits on your shoulders like a blacksmith. The air above the Yamuna trembles. Sand sticks to damp ankles. Dragonflies skim the reeds, and somewhere in the long grass, unseen insects buzz like tiny spinning wheels. Krishna and Arjuna are resting by the river. It should feel peaceful. It almost does. The water moves in slow green folds. White cranes stand one-legged near the bank, pretending to be sages. A breeze comes and goes, carrying wet mud, lotus, and the smoke of distant cooking fires. Arjuna has set aside his weapons for a while. Krishna leans easy, bright-eyed, looking like a man with nowhere urgent to be, which, with Krishna, usually means something enormous is about to happen. You can feel it. They are not alone for long. A Brahmin comes toward them through the glare. At first he seems ordinary enough, tall, hungry-looking, wrapped in bark-colored cloth, his beard rough, his eyes lit with a strange intensity. But there is something wrong with the way the heat bends around him. The air near him flickers. His skin holds a coppery glow, as if some hidden flame has been banked just beneath it. He tells them his hunger is unbearable. He says he has eaten too much of the wrong thing for too long, and now only one meal will cure him. Not rice, not fruit, not clarified butter. A forest, Khandava. The name itself feels dense and old. Khandava forest spreads wide and deep, thick as a dream, crawling with life. Great sal and fig trees lock branches overhead. Vines twist around trunks older than dynasties. Pools lie hidden under mats of leaves. Deer pass there. Tigers sleep there. Monkeys shriek there. Hermits keep lonely fires there. Nagas dwell there too, serpent lords and their kin, in hollows, pools, roots, and secret chambers below the earth. And over this whole vast green breathing world, the Brahmin's hunger falls. He reveals himself then, not by some theatrical burst, nothing so simple. It is just suddenly obvious. This is Agni, god of fire, and he is tired of disguise. He explains his strange condition. A king had fed him so many offerings, so much ghee, so much rich sacrificial food, that even fire had grown sluggish. Imagine that, fire itself overfed. Agni, lord of appetite, now needing rough fuel like a physician's cure. So he wants Khandava. There is only one problem. Indra protects that forest. Every time Agni tries to consume it, rain comes in crashing sheets. Thunder rolls. The flames hiss and die. Again and again, the forest is spared. Agni wants help. 2 warriors strong enough to hold off the sky itself while he feeds. Krishna listens with that unreadable half-smile of his. Arjuna listens too, but differently. He is young, fierce, splendid, still gathering the shape of his destiny. You can almost hear the click inside him as the challenge lands. Hold off, Indra. Guard the fire. Stand at the edge of a world and say no one passes. For a certain kind of hero, this is an invitation dressed as madness. Agni knows what men like this need. He offers gifts, not trinkets, not garlands, weapons. The god of fire calls upon Varuna, lord of the waters, and from that hidden treasury comes a bow made for impossible hands, the Gandiva. It gleams dark and deep, curved like stored thunder. Along with it comes an inexhaustible quiver and a chariot fit for the work ahead, bannered and fierce. Krishna too receives his terrible discus and the mace that suits his hand like memory. When Arjuna takes the bow, the whole mood of the afternoon changes. You can feel it in your chest. This is no longer a riverside rest. This is the hinge of an age. The wood of the Gandiva is smooth and cool at first touch, then suddenly warm, as if it recognizes him. The string hums when drawn, not metaphorically, not poetically. It actually hums, low and alive, a note that seems to go down into the ground and up into the bright, pitiless sky. Krishna mounts the chariot. Arjuna stands beside him. Agni rises, and Khandava begins to burn. At first, the fire moves almost politely. A line of orange appears among the dry brush. Leaves curl, resin pops in the bark. Little fingers of light run up dead wood and fallen twigs. A few birds burst upward, annoyed more than afraid. Deer lift their heads. Monkeys chatter from branch to branch. Then the wind shifts. Then Agni remembers who he is. Flames leap high enough to lick the lower branches. Thick smoke climbs in rolling towers. The air turns harsh, resinous, bitter. You taste it on your tongue. Sparks whirl past like angry fireflies. The crackle becomes a roar, and the roar becomes a wall of sound. Now the forest understands. Everything runs. Boars crash through ferns. Hares dart under roots. Tigers streak gold through smoke. Elephants shove saplings aside in blind panic. Birds rise in black and white storms, wings beating cinders into the air. Snakes pour from holes and hollows, scales flashing, seeking water, shadow, any gap at all. You are standing at the edge of it with the heat on your face, and there is no gentle way to witness this. Khandava is alive in 1,000,000 forms, and all of them want out. But Krishna and Arjuna are already moving. Their chariot circles the burning wood like a bright, hard thought. Horses scream against the din. Wheels bite the earth. Arjuna's arrows rise so quickly they stop seeming separate. They become a woven curtain, then a fence, then a sky of sharpened light. Every path outward closes. Every opening fills. If a beast charges, it meets arrows. If birds rise in a flock, shafts split the air before them. If serpents glide toward the riverbank, there too the god stands. Krishna drives with impossible calm, dark hair lifting in the heat wind, eyes steady, hands sure. There is something almost playful in the way he turns the chariot at the exact instant needed, as if he has done this forever, which, with Krishna, might also be true. And Agni feeds. Soon the whole forest is one long cry and one long flame. Smoke drags across the river. Ash settles on the water in grey petals. The smell is overwhelming. Green wood, hot sap, scorched leaves, earth baked hard, the musk of frightened animals, the oily sting of burning reeds. Sweat runs down your back, your eyes smart. Even the sun seems dim behind the smoke, a copper coin hung in a blackened sky. Indra sees. Of course he sees. Clouds gather from every side, piling blue-black over the burning horizon. Thunder opens overhead. Lightning flashes white through the smoke. Rain begins in heavy drops, great splashing blows against dust and leaf. Then it becomes a deluge. Any ordinary fire would have died. Agni is not ordinary, and Arjuna is no ordinary god. He lifts the Khandava and sends arrows upward so thickly that they roof the forest. Rain strikes that woven ceiling and runs off in shining sheets. It is a strange sight. Water denied by a man, the sky itself turned away. Thunder booms, the horses toss foam. Krishna laughs once, very softly, almost like someone pleased with a difficult game. Indra sends more. Winds lash the trees, storm clouds crack open. Celestial beings gather in the high air. The battle widens until it feels less like a forest fire and more like the world trying to argue with itself. You stand in that brightness and smoke and hear everything at once. Conch like thunder, the whip snap of arrows, the crashing of trees, the frantic calling of peacocks, the hiss of steam where rain meets flame, the pounding heart inside your own ribs. Arjuna does not stop. He strikes down storm after storm of resistance. He turns back creatures rushing the perimeter. He drives the fire inward, then outward, then around, according to Agni's need. The inexhaustible quiver never empties. It simply keeps answering his hand, arrow after arrow, breath after breath. There is a terrible beauty to skill like this, and that is part of what makes the day so frightening. The men at the edge of Khandava are not simple monsters. They are magnificent, controlled, focused. Divine things move through them. Krishna shines with calm purpose. Arjuna shines with warrior joy. Agni shines with appetite restored. And inside the ring, whole lives are ending in smoke. Somewhere in that blazing depth lives Takshaka, king among Nagas. But fate is odd in its timing. On this day, Takshaka is away, not absent forever, not spared from grief, just away long enough to survive and remember. His home is not. The Nagas of Khandava are old serpent beings, neither mere snakes nor simple monsters from village tales. They have lineages, treasures, children, alliances, old grudges, sacred places. Some dwell in burrows and root holes. Some move through pools bright with lotus. Some keep secret roads below the earth, cool as moonlit stone. Their world touches the human world only in flashes. An abandoned shrine, a sudden gleam near a riverbank, a hooded shape slipping through grass at dusk. In Khandava, that hidden world catches fire. Serpents writhe from burning holes. Naga women clutch their children and seek the marshes. Young warriors rise in anger and are driven back by shafts too swift to dodge. Ancient creatures that have slept through generations wake into heat and smoke and confusion. This is where Takshaka enters at last. Not as a random venomous shadow in a palace fruit basket. Not yet. Here he appears through loss. His wife is in the forest. His household is in the forest. His son Ashvasana is there too, young and not yet hardened into the long, cold patience that great grief can teach. When the fire closes and arrows bar the exits, panic tears through the serpent clans. Naga mothers rush one way, children another. Roots crack, pools boil. underground chambers filled with smoke. You can imagine the confusion, the kind where names are shouted and swallowed by thunder, the kind where you reach for one hand and grasp only hot air. Ashvasana's mother tries to save her son. In some tellings, she carries him up into the sky, trying to slip past Arjuna's storm of arrows. In others, she lifts him in desperation and simply runs toward any opening that still looks merciful. It changes little. The same blaze, the same barrier, the same young prince escaping by a thread while his mother falls. Ashvasana survives. That matters later. It will matter later. A son saved in smoke becomes a memory sharpened for years. A mother lost in flame becomes a wound no cooling river ever fully touches. A king who returns to his ruined forest does not return unchanged. And Takshaka will return. But the burning is not finished yet. Indra now commits fully to the defense. After all, Takshaka is dear to him. The king of the gods has ties with the Serpent king, protection, friendship, obligation. The old world is full of such bindings, so the storm grows fiercer. The heavens send hosts, celestial weapons flash through rain and smoke. The river wind screams sideways, trees split under thunderbolts. For a while, the whole sky looks hammered silver and black. Arjuna meets it all. He fights beings men pray to. Imagine the strain in his arms, the grit in his teeth, the sting in his eyes, sweat cutting pale lines through the soot on his skin, the bowstring marking his fingers. He is not yet the war-worn elder who will one day fail to summon his weapons. Not yet the grieving grandfather's uncle watching a dynasty thin out. Here he is all force and fire and impossible concentration. You are beside the riverbank, hearing the Khandava sing again and again. Krishna, meanwhile, is a storm of a different kind. Where Arjuna is speed, Krishna is certainty. He drives straight into danger as if roads were made for him in advance. His discus flashes, his mace answers. His presence settles the chaos around him, even while deepening it for everyone else. There is no hesitation in him. That is perhaps the most unsettling thing. He is perfectly at ease in catastrophe. And Khandava continues to fall. Tree after tree gives way in showers of sparks. Huge trunks groan and collapse, sending plumes of embers into the darkened noon. Birds, overcome by smoke, drop into the fire below. Lakes shrink, reeds vanish, small shrines blacken. Hermits flee where they can, though not all find passage. Animals that would never stand side by side in ordinary life, wolf and deer, mongoose and cobra, peacock and jackal, rush together before the same wall of heat. There is almost something sad and absurd in that. All old enemies, now all equally unwelcome at the border. One can picture even Krishna glancing sideways at the sheer madness of it. Fire demanding a meal, rain trying to unmake it, a prince blocking the sky, and every creature in creation suddenly auditioning for the role of desperate. The whole day has become absurdly large. Still, the day is merciless. Among the few who escape is Maya, the great Asura architect. He runs from the burning and comes within Arjuna's range. This time, Arjuna spares him. Why? Perhaps pity, perhaps impulse, perhaps Krishna's will brushing lightly through the moment. Maya falls at their feet in gratitude and promises repayment. That promise too will matter. From the ruin of the forest will rise a marvel of halls and illusion, polished stone so smooth a proud man may mistake water for floor and floor for water. But that is later. For now, Maya flees the ashes with his life, and Khandava pays the price. Hours pass, maybe more than hours. In a fire like this, time becomes strange. the sun is hidden, then visible, then hidden again behind smoke. Your throat feels lined with soot. The skin of your face tightens from heat. The roar settles into the bones. The world reduces itself to flame, bowstring, thunder, wheel, river, breath. At last, even Indra yields. Whether he yields to fate, to exhaustion, to admiration for his son, or simply to the fact that this day will not be turned aside, the storm begins to break. The clouds tear open into ragged fringes. Rain slackens. Light comes through in red shafts. Agni burns stronger than before, fed at last, restored, terrible and satisfied. Khandava is no longer forest. It is cinder, stump, steam, blackened root, drifting ash. What had been green shadow and bird song becomes a smoking scar stretching to the horizon. The smell lingers. Wet charcoal, bitter sap, hot stone after flame. Here and there, isolated trunks still glow from within. Little tongues of fire move under fallen branches. The riverbank is carpeted with grey. You stand there after the noise, and the silence is almost worse. Not true silence, never that. There is crackling, a distant hiss, the restless snort of horses, but the layered living sound of the forest is gone. No monkey calls, no peacock cries, no insect choir, just the afterbreath of destruction. Agni is cured. He shines now with clean force, his sickness burned away. He blesses the two who helped him. Glory settles around Krishna and Arjuna like the last light of sunset. Their names are enlarged by this day. Their power has crossed another threshold. And somewhere beyond the smoking edge of that ruined world, news begins to travel. Takshaka hears. You can imagine the moment any way you like. A messenger arriving mud-streaked and half-choked with smoke. A surviving Naga sliding through a hidden tunnel and collapsing at the king's feet. A son, Ashvasana, wild-eyed and trembling, speaking of arrows thick as iron rain, of his mother's end, of fire boxing the world on every side. However it comes hard. Takshaka learns that Khandava is gone, that the halls under root and pool are broken, that those under his protection were scattered, burned, or driven out, that the men at the center of it were not nameless hunters or frightened villagers, but Krishna and Arjuna themselves, heroes whose names already move through kingdoms like drums. This is how revenge takes root, not in a hiss from nowhere, not in some cartoonish love of harm. It begins in the chest, heavy and hot, in the place where home used to be. It begins in the memory of what cannot be rebuilt exactly as it was. Forests return, perhaps, in time. Lineages too. But not that grove, that pool, that chamber, that afternoon before the sky turned to arrows. Takshaka survives the fire, and survival has a way of preserving anger beautifully. Years pass, then more years. The Pandavas rise, they rule, they lose everything. They fight, they win, they age, the world shifts. Sons are born and buried. Great vows are fulfilled and broken. Kingdoms change hands. The old heroes become names spoken with incense and tears. But certain injuries do not fade just because history gets busy. In hidden realms below the earth, where lamps burn on jeweled walls, and serpent kings sit upright in cool shadow, memory keeps excellent records. Takshaka remembers Khandava. He remembers Indra's failed reign. He remembers who stood at the forest's edge. He remembers what happened to his people when heroic hands decided that one world's hunger mattered more than another world's home. And then, generations later, a grandson of Arjuna's line will make one foolish, cruel gesture in a hermitage. A dead snake laid across a sage's shoulder, an insult tossed into silence, a curse spoken. And suddenly, the old fire will stir again. You can feel it already, even here among the ashes. The roots of what comes for Parikshit are not in the palace. They are here, in smoke and scorched bark, in a serpent king's grief, in a sun carried through flame, in a forest where no one escaped because the greatest archer alive decided no one would. Evening begins to gather over the ruined land. The heat softens at last, though the ground still radiates warmth through your sandals. Ash drifts down in slow, pale flakes, like a strange dry snow no child would ever wish to catch. Krishna and Arjuna stand amid the settling smoke, two bright survivors in a world they have changed forever. Behind them, the river keeps moving. Before them, the blackened earth waits, and under that earth, in chambers not yet cooled by time, the serpent world remembers. And somewhere beneath the feet of kings, in places lit by gems instead of sun, the one called Takshaka remembers. Down below the roots of fig trees and sal trees, below wells and shrine stones and palace foundations, there are older roads. They do not take chariots. They do not welcome sandals. They wind through the dark in long, cool curves, and the air there smells of wet earth, sandal paste, lotus roots, and stone that has never once felt noon. You go down by imagination only. That is safest. The first thing you notice is the temperature. After the baked heat of Khandava, after smoke and cinders and ash stinging the eyes, this underworld feels almost kind. The walls shine with veins of crystal. Lamps are not needed. Rubies burn with their own red sleep. Emeralds hold green twilight inside them. Pearls gleam like little moons caught in rock. Water runs everywhere, not in wild rivers, but in quiet channels cut through black stone, slipping beside stairways and under carved arches. The sound is soft enough to calm a restless mind. You could almost forget whose realm this is. Almost. Because at every doorway stand the guardians. They are not the little garden snakes of human courtyards. These are hooded beings with bright eyes and stillness so complete it feels like a held breath. Some wear gold armlets, some carry spears tipped with pale metal. Some are wholly serpent. Some bear the upper shape of men, broad-shouldered and jeweled, with scaled coils below. Their hoods are painted with marks like crescent moons, sunbursts, curling vines, and all of them know exactly who enters. You feel it at once. This is not a burrow, not a nest. This is a court. This is a kingdom people on the surface speak of only when frightened. In the halls below the earth, names matter. Lineage matters. Old injuries matter most of all. Takshaka moves through these chambers like a king who has no need to hurry. He does not slither in panic or strike from a ditch like some roadside serpent in a farmer's tale. He is received. Space opens around him. Heads bow. Anklets chime. The torchless light glances off his ornaments and the patterned sheen of his scales. He is beautiful in the way a monsoon cloud is beautiful when it has decided to break. Broad hood, eyes the color of copper warmed by fire, jewels at the throat, a crest that catches green light and throws it back cold. When he takes a more human shape, the effect is no less unsettling. Tall, dark, smooth-faced, with a stillness that belongs to things older than cities. Even then, something in him remains serpent. The gaze lingers too long. The silence coils before it moves. You stand, if only in the mind, at the edge of his audience hall. The ceiling is set with gems like constellations. Pillars rise carved with lotus, wave, and entwining serpents. cool mist hangs low over the floor. Courtiers gather in rings. Naga princes, old mothers with silvered hoods, warriors with lacquered bows, priests feeding fragrant resin into low blue flames. There is music too, but even the music seems careful. A veena hums from somewhere beyond a curtain of pearls. Small bells answer it. No one here mistakes softness for weakness. At the far end, on a raised seat fashioned from ivory-colored stone and hammered gold, Takshaka listens. That is one of the dangerous things about him. He listens, not like an old man dozing through petitions, not like a boastful chief waiting to interrupt. He listens with the patience of a creature that can remain coiled for hours before deciding whether the moment has come. Messengers kneel. Scouts report movements in forests above. Traders from hidden streams bring word of mines, herbs, and crossings. Priests speak of omens seen in molting skins, in moonlit pools, in dreams. And somewhere beneath all of it, always, is memory. Khandava did not vanish below the earth. It came down in survivors' voices. One says the sky turned to arrows. One says the trees themselves seemed to cry out. One says even the rivers could not save those who ran for them. And Takshaka heard all of it. He had not been there when the fire closed its iron ring. Fate, luck, distance, call it what you like. A king absent from his own forest. There is a bitter taste in that. But absence is no comfort when your people come crawling home, singed by flame, carrying children who no longer wake, naming brothers who never escape the smoke. That sort of news does not fade. It settles. It hardens into something with scales. You can feel the air in the hall cool further when the old names are spoken. Not Krishna, not Arjuna, not yet. In this place, they are not sung as shining heroes. They are remembered as the ones who stood at the edge of the burning and closed every path. There are widows below the earth, too. There are mothers who still touch the jewels on their arms when they speak of Khandava, as if steadying themselves against heat remembered through the skin. There are young warriors born after the fire who grew up hearing lullabies that ended in embers. They know the names before they know the map of the upper world. You understand something there. Revenge in such a place is not a sudden passion. It is family property. It is inherited like a crown. Takshaka does not waste it. He keeps it polished. At times, he leaves the lower halls and rises to places where heaven and storm draw nearer. For he is not only king among Nagas. He is known in high regions too. There are bonds between serpent lords and powers of rain, thunder and cloud. Takshaka's name reaches the court of Indra. You can picture that road as well, though no human traveler would enjoy the climb. A passage through mountain caverns, a ledge where mist wraps the ankles, then upward beyond eagles, beyond cedar and snow, where thunder mutters to itself all afternoon. There are places where the sky appears close enough to bruise with your hand. There Takshaka has stood beneath Indra's banners, jeweled and coiled, not as a pet, not as a curiosity, but as an ally fit for the king of gods. Indra knows serpents. He knows, too, what it means to protect one world while another burns. There is old traffic between them, favors, shelters, attendance in celestial courts, the exchange of homage and power. When Takshaka enters those shining regions, he is not unnamed. Even among the devas, he carries weight. That matters a great deal, because it means his anger is not the rage of something cornered in grass. It is the anger of a ruler with memory, allies, and rank. Sometimes, in the deep hours, when the underworld grows very quiet and even the channels of water seem to hush, Takshaka sits alone. No court then, no petitioners, no music, only a chamber lined with pale stone and moon-bright gems. A dish of incense breathing thin streams into the dark. Perhaps a bronze bowl of water before him, still enough to hold reflections. You are close enough now to see that kingship has its own loneliness, whether one sits on earth or under it. He remembers the forest before the burning, not merely as territory, as life. Shades so thick noon became green dusk, vines hanging low with rain, parrots flashing like dropped flowers through branches, antelope stepping daintily through fern, children playing near roots broad as palace walls, sacred pools where blue lotus opened at dawn, the scent of leaf mold after rain, tree bark warm to the touch in summer, snake paths no human eye could follow. Home. When that word lives in a creature older than empire, it does not break easily. But once broken, it does not mend easily either. There are other Nagas in those halls, and not all are the same. Some are fierce and eager, always ready to rise against men. Some are cautious, warning that surface kings breed quickly and forget nothing. Some are devout, trusting in old balances to settle old wounds. Some are simply tired. Every people has these kinds. Even serpent kingdoms have relatives who arrive late, complain loudly, and act as if curses are a scheduling inconvenience. Still, when Takshaka enters, the room settles. He is one of those rulers whose silence brings order faster than shouting ever could. Children are warned by his name, yes. They hear of the hiss in the dark and the flash of fangs, and they go still. But beneath the fear, there is grandeur. A people spread through rivers, roots, caverns, ruined wells, abandoned temples, and hidden marshes, old treaties, border quarrels, drought years, shrine dues, marriages between Naga houses. A throne under the sun is still a throne under stone, and Takshaka sits on his. There are festivals below too. It would surprise many on the surface, but watch long enough and you will see courtyards strewn with flower petals, silver lamps floating in underground pools, dancers whose anklets flicker like rain on leaves. You will smell sesame sweets, camphor smoke, milk warmed with cardamom, rice steamed in lotus leaves. Children chase each other around carved pillars until some elder clicks her tongue and gathers them back. Musicians play while pearl curtains tremble in the moving air. For a little while, grief loosens its grip. Then someone sings an old song of forests, and everyone grows still. This is how generations remember, not with speeches, with pauses. You are walking now through one of the outer galleries where murals cover the walls in crushed mineral colors. There are painted rivers, hooded deities, mountains, stars, coils of eternity, and forests so vivid you almost smell rain again. In one panel, Nagas rise, crowned from sacred pools. In another, they shelter sages in meditation. In another, they circle treasure, not out of greed, but guardianship. And then there are damaged panels, smoke-darkened, half-restored. Even below the earth, the fire has reached the art. Takshaka pauses before one of them. The attendants wait several steps behind. No one presses close. No one asks what he sees. Kings deserve privacy, and wounded kings even more. The painting shows a grove with broad canopied trees and a stream running silver between them. Once there had been painted figures there too. Family, perhaps. Courtiers, children. The middle has blackened. He lifts one hand and touches the ruined place. Just once. That is enough. You do not need tears to know grief is present. Some beings grieve without ever changing their expression. They become quieter, more exact, more patient. They begin to understand that time can be sharpened and used. This is where Takshaka becomes dangerous in a deeper way. Not because he is furious every hour, because he is not. Wild rage burns hot and wastes itself. Takshaka carries the colder kind, the kind that can wait through seasons, through rains, through the passing of famous men. The kind that teaches sons the names of the dead and does not let those names drift away. On the surface, kings age under the sun. Their banners fray. Their sons inherit arguments they barely understand. But below, in chambers where light never changes, resentment can be stored like treasure. Years slide by overhead. The sons of the Pandavas become fathers. The old victors pass. One age folds itself away. Another begins. Palace records change. Priests recite new births. Farmers plow land where ashes once lay deep. Yet beneath all that, Takshaka remains. That is what frightens people. A human enemy may die and spare you the trouble. A Naga king has the manners of endurance. You are there when envoys from hidden clans arrive bearing tribute. Gold from riverbeds, rare herbs, pale stones with cooling power, cloth fine as shed skin. They bow and speak of surface politics. A throne weakened here, a kingdom swollen there, a marriage alliance in the north, a rash prince in the west. Takshaka hears all of it, not because he covets every human quarrel, because he knows one truth very well. Men forget what the earth remembers, so he remembers for it. At times his pride shows openly, not noisy pride, nothing so vulgar. It is in the tilt of the hood, in the measured generosity to those beneath him, in the refusal to beg favor of anyone, in the calm certainty that the Naga race is ancient, sacred, and not made to crouch in fear of palace walls. He can be gracious. He can reward loyalty richly. He can send gems, medicines, and blessings to shrines where serpent deities are still honored with milk and flowers. And when he is dishonored, he does not forget that either. You feel, standing in that jeweled coolness, why human kingdoms both fear and need such beings. Serpents belong to thresholds, wells, granaries, temple foundations, monsoon fields, the spaces between safety and danger. A king may build walls, but he still depends on rain, on earth, on the unseen life below roots. To make an enemy of the serpent world is to pick a quarrel with what lies under your own floor. Takshaka knows this. He wears that knowledge like another jewel. Far above him, Parikshit sits on a throne inherited from fire and ruin. He is the grandson of Arjuna, child of a nearly ended line, the last bright branch of a battered house. Below, Takshaka remembers exactly whose grandson that is. Not in a loud way, not every moment. He's too royal for constant ranting. But the memory lives beside his pulse. Arjuna's arrows, Krishna's turning discus, Khandava aflame, a forest closed, a people scattered, the wound passed down. You can almost hear it in the water moving through the channels, soft as whispering silk. In these lower halls, no curse has yet been spoken against Parikshit. No dead snake has yet been laid across a sage's shoulders. No fruit basket has crossed a guarded threshold. Those moments are still waiting in the dark ahead. But the king beneath the earth already exists in full, not a random serpent, not a nightmare with a crown, a ruler of hidden peoples, a guest of Indra, a survivor of old fire, a keeper of memory, proud, elegant, patient. And patient anger is the sort that lasts long enough to meet destiny halfway. The jewel lamps burn without flame, Water threads through stone. In the courtyards below the world, hooded guardians keep their watch, and Takshaka remembers. Years pass. Then one hot day, Parikshit rides into the forest and opens the door himself. The day begins in heat, not the kind that glows gently over palace roofs. This is hunting heat, forest heat. A hard white sun pressing down through the sal and shimshapa trees until even the leaves look tired. The king rides out with bow in hand and dust on his sandals, and the horses are already sweating before the morning is old. You ride with him into that thick green hush where the air smells of dry bark, crushed herbs, and old river mud baking under light. Cicadas rasp from the branches. Somewhere far off, a peacock cries like a nobleman having a dramatic complaint. Parikshit is no weak king playing at sport. He is a grandson of warriors, raised on names that still echo like temple bells. Arjuna, Abhimanyu, Yudhishthira, Bhima. Men who crossed battlefields as if the earth itself had promised to hold their feet steady. Their stories sat beside his meals. Their weapons hung in memory over his childhood. And that kind of inheritance is heavy. Even on a good day, on a hot day, with no prey in sight, with the forest swallowing every track and every sound, it becomes heavier still. He sees a deer first as a flicker between trees, antlers, brown flank, one clean opening through the leaves. Parikshit rises in the chariot and looses an arrow. It flies straight, singing for a moment through the hot air, and the deer leaps away. Perhaps struck, perhaps only startled, it vanishes into brush before anyone can say for certain. That is enough. Now the king wants the animal found, so the hunt turns from pleasure to pursuit. Wheels bump over roots, men shove through thorn and creeper, branches slap shoulders and cheeks, the smell of horse sweat thickens, the sun climbs higher, every patch of shade feels too small. Still no deer. Parikshit pushes deeper. The king's lips are dry now. Dust clings to the edge of his beard. His hands, strong and sure on a bowstring in the morning, feel heavier by noon. Hunger comes first as a mild complaint, then as something sharper. Thirst follows, and thirst is worse. Hunger nags, thirst insults. You can feel the forest pressing in around him, green, bright, and strangely unhelpful. So much life everywhere, and not one convenient cup of water. Ancient kings had many glories. Personal drinking gourds did not always arrive at the dramatic moment. At last, the hunting party scatters a little, each man searching his own line through the woods. Parikshit comes upon a clearing. It is small, still, and cool by comparison, as if the forest has taken one long breath and decided not to let it out. A hermitage stands there beneath broad trees. The ground is swept clean. A little smoke from old sacrificial fires lingers in the air, carrying sandalwood, dry kusa grass, and that faint, sweet scent of clarified butter soaked into ash. Birdsong softens at the edges. This is the kind of place where even the light behaves itself. No shouting, no clatter, just stillness. In the center sits a sage, Shamika. He's seated upon a mat, body straight, senses turned inward so completely that he seems carved from bark and silence. His matted hair falls in coils. His skin is lean from discipline. His eyes are closed, not sleeping, far from it. He has gone where kings, even with all their banners, cannot command entry. Parikshit steps closer. He asks for water. No answer. He asks who has seen the deer. Nothing. He speaks again, more sharply now, with the expectation of a man unused to being ignored. He is the king, guardian of roads, fields, altars, taxes, punishments, harvests. Men rise when he arrives. Messengers run. Doors open. Still the sage does not stir. Not a blink, not a nod, not the smallest sign that the words have even brushed against him. The clearing grows stranger with every heartbeat, because silence, when you are thirsty and tired, can begin to feel less like peace and more like insult. You stand there with him and feel it happen. That tiny turning of the mind, the moment discomfort begins dressing itself up as righteousness. He is not merely thirsty, he thinks. He is being disrespected. He is not merely tired. He is being dismissed. It takes so little. A hot day, a missed shot, an empty stomach, a man deep in meditation who does not perform the courtesies a king expects. That is all. Near the hermitage, half in shadow, lies a dead snake. It is thin, slack, dusty along the scales. Not some great hooded cobra risen from legend, just a dead forest snake, forgotten by hawk or jackal, curled in a loose shape on the ground. Parikshit sees it, and something petty, foolish, and sharp wakes in him. Not murderous rage, nothing so grand, something smaller, which is often worse. He does not draw a blade. He does not order punishment. He does not smash the hermitage or drag the sage to court. That would be one kind of madness. Instead, he chooses mockery. He lifts the dead snake on the tip of his bow. The body dangles there, limp and faintly dusty, swaying in the hot air. One of the king's men may have shifted uneasily. Another may have looked quickly away. Nobody wants to be the person who says, "Perhaps this is a terrible idea," to a hungry king in a forest. Parikshit steps to the motionless sage, and with the bow's end, he lays the dead snake across Shamika's shoulders, looping it around the rishi's neck like a grotesque garland. That is the moment. Small enough to miss if you blink. No thunder yet, no curse in the air. Just a tired man doing one ugly thing. The dead snake hangs there against the sage's chest. Shamika still does not move. The insult lands upon a silence too deep to answer it. Parikshit looks at him. Perhaps he expects a start, a flinch, anger, some immediate proof that his annoyance has made contact. Nothing. The sage remains inward-turned, untouched by the king's little cruelty. And so the act feels thinner the moment it is done. Parikshit turns away. That is often how these moments go. The hand moves faster than wisdom. Then pride keeps the back straight, while regret trails behind like dust. He leaves the hermitage and returns toward his city. The forest path back feels longer. The hunt has soured. The heat has not lessened. The men around him speak carefully, if at all. Horses snort, wheels creak. The king's thoughts begin to cool, and cooling thoughts can be uncomfortable company. By the time Hastinapura's walls rise in the distance, something in him already knows. He has not behaved like the heir of the Pandavas. He has behaved like an irritated man who forgot himself for a handful of heartbeats. Back at the hermitage, the stillness eventually breaks. Not by Shamika, by a boy. Shringi, the sage's son, is away when this happens. He is young, fierce, bright with ascetic power, and wrapped in that dangerous kind of purity that has not yet learned softness. He has spent his life around vows, fires, river water at dawn, recitation, discipline. He knows what honor is. He knows what insult is. He knows very little about mercy arriving slowly. He returns through the forest with other young ascetics. The afternoon is burning gold now. Dust lies soft over roots. Somewhere nearby, cattle bells knock gently together. The boys carry kusha grass, firewood, little vessels of water. Their bodies are lean, their minds quick, And like many boys entrusted with holiness, they carry themselves as if the universe ought to behave. One of them has seen what happened, or heard enough of it. He tells Shringi, a king came, asked for welcome, received no answer, and in anger placed a dead snake around the neck of the sage, who was deep in meditation. The words strike like sparks on dry cotton. Shringi stops where he is. You can almost feel the air change around him. The birds seem farther away. The shade beneath the trees sharpens. His face tightens with the sun's outrage, but also something more severe. A prince has insulted a Brahmin. A ruler whose duty is protection has brought contempt into a hermitage. The boy trembles, not with weakness, with power looking for shape. He goes to the river first, as ascetics do when speech is about to become more than speech. He sips water for purification. He touches it. He gathers his anger and gives it direction. This is no ordinary forest curse, tossed out like a village quarrel. He speaks with austerity behind him, with discipline, with the stored heat of practice. And because he is young, he speaks hard. He declares that the king, who in arrogance placed a dead snake on the neck of his blameless father, will, on the 7th day from now, be struck down by Takshaka. There, the name enters the air, Takshaka, like a blade sliding free. The forest hears it. The river hears it. The boys around Shringi hear it and go still. What was one man's forest rudeness has suddenly found an ancient road to walk on. A king, a curse, 7 days, and the Serpent King, named as instrument. You can feel the world narrow around that promise. It is spoken only once. That is enough. No army has moved. No messenger has ridden. Yet fate already has a timetable. Shringi, burning with the force of his own words, goes to his father's hermitage. He finds Shamika, at last returned from meditation. The dead snake still hanging where the king left it. The sight only confirms his fury. He tells his father what he has done. He tells him that justice has been called down, that within 7 days the insulting king will meet Takshaka and fall. He expects approval. Instead, the hermitage grows heavy. Shamika removes the dead snake calmly. No panic, no theatrical outrage. He has come back from far within himself, and now he must deal with the ordinary wreckage made by human temper. He hears what his son has spoken, and grief settles over him at once. Because the sage knows 2 things at the same time. The king acted badly, and the curse is too much. He tells the boy this, not in a flood of anger, worse than anger, in sadness. Parikshit, he says, is no common criminal. He's a king charged with protecting the realm. A ruler's lapse is real, but a Brahmin's wrath must be measured. Fire that is not watched burns the altar and the home together. Shringi should not have loosed such a sentence in haste. The boy has spoken from wounded devotion. Shamika sees that. But devotion mixed with pride can become its own poison. The old sage laments the speed of youth. One hot act answered by another. One insult met with doom. And now the spoken word cannot simply be gathered back into silence. You are in the hermitage with them, and the place smells of smoke gone cool, river water, bark cloth dried in sun. Evening insects begin their thin songs. The forest that felt so serene before now carries a faint unease, as if every leaf has heard news. Shamika thinks of the king. Perhaps he sees Parikshit as he truly is, not a monster, not a saint, but a weary man who failed for a moment and will now pay in full. A grandson of the great line, trying to hold a world together after too much ruin. Proud, yes. Capable, yes. Imperfect, certainly, Human, absolutely. And because Shamika is better than the insult done to him, he decides the king must be warned. He sends a disciple to Hastinapura. The messenger goes quickly through dimming forest paths, while dusk spills blue between the trees. Jackals begin to call. Smoke rises from distant huts where evening meals are cooking. Rice, lentils, a little onion and ghee, perhaps. Village dogs bark as he passes. The sky lowers itself from brass to amber to the deep purple that makes lamps necessary. The news he carries is terrible, but he carries it cleanly. He tells what happened. He tells what Shringi said. He tells that on the 7th day, Takshaka will come. In the palace, when the message reaches Parikshit, the king listens. No one laughs. No one says that curses are forest talk and kings have walls, because Parikshit remembers. He remembers the heat, the thirst, the hermitage, the motionless sage, the ugly little impulse. Shame returns fast when someone else describes your worst moment aloud. He does not deny it. That matters. He admits what he did, and in the admitting, the act becomes heavier, not lighter. You can feel the chamber around him then. Cool stone underfoot, oil lamps flickering against polished pillars, the faint perfume of incense rising from evening worship, guards standing with spears that suddenly seem useful for almost nothing. Outside, the city hums in ordinary ways. Potters finish their day. Mothers call children inside. Temple bells ring the hour. Inside, 7 days have begun. Parikshit bows his head. What must a king feel then? Part fear, of course, but also disbelief at the scale of it. That a dead snake tossed in irritation could summon Takshaka's name across the world. That one moment of unkingly behavior could crack open everything his life has rested on. The room grows quiet. He asks for protection. Naturally he does. Kings do not sit down and politely invite curses to arrive. Priests are summoned, advisors called, guards doubled, mantras remembered, remedies considered. The whole machinery of survival begins to stir. But beneath all that movement runs another feeling. He knows the curse is deserved, in part. Not the size of it, perhaps. Not the serpent's bite already moving toward him through time, but the fault at the beginning. That is his. And once a man sees his own hand at the start of disaster, the world never feels quite as solid. Far away, in hidden realms below root and stone, the name Takshaka has already been spoken. The Serpent King has not yet entered the road. Not yet. For now there is only a palace beginning to fortify itself against something ancient, invisible, and patient. For now there is Parikshit, the last great heir of the Pandavas, sitting very still while lamps burn lower and, the first night of 7, gathers beyond the walls. You can almost hear the city breathe, a conch far off, sandals on stone, the whisper of silk as servants move quietly, and under all of it, something colder, the sense that the smallest act can wake the oldest fire. Once the curse is spoken, every sound changes. Even the palace doors seem to breathe differently. The messenger reaches Hastinapura with dust on his ankles and fear in his mouth. He tells the court what happened in the forest. He tells of the silent sage, the dead snake, the angry sun, and the sentence laid down like a blade. 7 days, and then Takshaka. The name moves through the palace faster than wind. Servants whisper it over brass water pots. Guards mutter it at the gate. Old women in inner chambers stop mid-prayer and press their palms together harder. Even the horses seem restless, stamping in the stables as though they smell rain that has not yet fallen. You can feel it in the corridors. The air is cooler, but not from mercy. Parikshit hears the curse in full and does not laugh it away. That matters. He's proud, yes. He's a king raised on the memory of men who stood against armies. But he is not a fool. He knows what a Brahmin's wrath can do. He knows what old enmities can survive in the dark places of the world. And he knows the name Takshaka. So the king moves fast. Orders fly from the royal chamber before the oil in the lamps has time to settle. Every entry to the palace is sealed and rechecked. Floors are swept and reswept. Cracks in stone are packed with clay. Drains are screened with metal mesh. Curtains are shaken out. Storage jars are emptied. Bed frames are lifted. Baskets are inspected. Flower garlands are searched, as if each jasmine bud might suddenly develop fangs. If a lizard twitches, 6 men jump. The city has seen war. It has seen siege. But this is stranger. An army at least comes with banners and dust. A serpent king might arrive in a knot of rope, in a garland, in a fruit, in a priest's staff, in a breath of shadow under a door. How do you defend against something that can be anywhere and nowhere? You build upward. Parikshit orders a high residence, prepared, raised and isolated, difficult for any creeping thing to reach. A tower chamber is chosen, encircled with watchmen, and reached by guarded stairs. Some say it is almost like a fortress lifted onto a single stem. No brush nearby, no standing water, no heaps of cloth, no loose firewood. The place is scrubbed until the stone smells of wet lime and ash. Around him gather Brahmins skilled in mantras against poison, priests with kusha grass and ladles of ghee, physicians carrying pouches of herbs sharp as bitterness itself. Snake charmers come too, men who know the habits of serpents, who keep anti-venom roots in wrapped cloth and wear charms of peacock feather and copper. Astrologers mark the sun's course. Ritual fires are kindled. Offerings are made. Protection begins to look impressive. Protection also begins to look tired. You stand in the chamber and hear the layering of it all. Vedic chants, low and steady. Sandalwood crackling in the sacred fire. Armor shifting as guards change posture. Bronze bowls clinking. A conch in some distant shrine. The soft hiss of someone whispering another instruction, not to leave fruit unattended, not to admit strangers, not to trust baskets, not to trust flowers, not to trust anything small enough to hide. The smell is thick, ghee smoke, neem leaves, sweat under polished armor, crushed tulsi, hot metal from lampstands, and under all of it, waiting. Parikshit sits in the middle of these precautions like a man surrounded by walls, made of prayer and nervousness. At first, he is all command. His chin stays high. He asks for reports. He tests the readiness of the guards. He makes certain the guilty act in the forest is acknowledged properly. Gifts are sent to the sage Shamika. Words of regret go with them. The king would mend what can still be mended, but a curse, once loosed, is not a horse you can whistle back into the stable. Day 1 passes with hard edges. No snake appears. That almost makes it worse. By the second day, the city learns how long 7 days can be. Markets stay open, but people speak more softly. Mothers pull children away from stone walls and shady roots. Men coming in from the riverbanks stamp out their sandals before entering houses. Every coiled rope gets a suspicious stare. Every vine earns disrespect it did not ask for. In the palace, boredom and terror begin their peculiar marriage. Guards hold spears and yawn. Priests chant until their voices roughen. Physicians smell every cup before the king drinks. Food tasters hover like anxious uncles. One poor servant nearly drops dead of fright when a string of black beads spills across the floor. It is an exhausting week for anyone trapped inside these walls. But inside the guarded place, something else begins. The king, having sealed every outer door he can think of, starts to feel the doors he cannot bar. Memory comes in. So does remorse. He remembers the heat of the hunt, the thirst, the sage seated in silence, the sharp, childish sting of being ignored. He remembers his own hand lifting that dead snake. It no longer feels like a king's gesture. It feels small, small and ugly. The kind of act a man commits in one hot minute and then spends 7 days staring at. You can almost hear the shift in him. The shoulders loosen first, then the voice. He asks for holy men, not merely to protect him, but to teach him. So they come. Ascetics with bark garments, scholars with matted hair silvered at the temples, gentle-faced reciters who smell of river water and old kusamats. Some sit cross-legged near the ritual fire. Some lean on staffs polished by years of pilgrimage. Some close their eyes before speaking, as if listening for a deeper current under the panic of the room. And the king listens. This is not the listening of a ruler waiting for useful advice. This is different, more still, more human. He hears of the soul that does not perish when the body falls away. He hears of time, which swallows kings and beggars with equal appetite. He hears of duty, repentance, and the strange mercy hidden inside truth, accepted fully. He hears names of the Lord, spoken softly, again and again, until the chamber that began as a trap starts to resemble an ashram suspended in the sky. Outside, soldiers guard the stair. Inside, the king is learning how not to fight the sunset. On the third day, the fear spreads beyond the palace walls and out across the kingdom. Messengers ride to neighboring settlements. Everyone is warned. Sages are invited. Anti-poison herbs are requested from distant groves. Men with baskets of roots and powders arrive dusty and proud, each convinced his remedy is the one that can outwit venom older than dynasties. The court takes all of them seriously, a wise choice, also a hilarious one, if you imagine the royal storerooms now stuffed with enough bitter herbs to season the Ganga. Bundles of medicinal plants hang from beams. Clay jars of clarified butter sit beside antidotal pastes. Stones for grinding decoctions wear down under constant use. Women in the inner apartments tie protective threads. Brahmins recite invocations over water. Even the cooks become solemn, checking lentils for pebbles and pebbles for signs of sorcery. You can feel how much people want effort to matter. Far from the palace, moving through the roads and wooded tracts toward Hastinapura, Takshaka is also on the way. He does not rush. That would not suit him. The Serpent King moves with the patience of things that live long underground. Sometimes he takes on a form that men can look at without fainting. Sometimes he moves hidden where eyes do not reach. He knows the curse's rhythm. He knows the appointed day. Why hurry? Time is already hunting for him. The road is hot by noon, cool and grainy by dusk. Dust lifts around travelers' feet. Tamarind shadows stretch across the path. Monkeys chatter from branches and then fall strangely quiet when he passes. Somewhere beyond the trees, a peacock calls, bright and foolish and alive. Takshaka keeps going. His anger is not loud now. It has aged into purpose. He carries with him old fire, Khandava's smoke, the memory of trees burning while men laughed and gods watched, the memory of a world beneath roots, wounded by human hands. And now a king, of the Pandava line, careless in pride, stands marked by a Brahmin's curse. The road between injury and reply has finally become straight. By the fourth day, Parikshit has changed enough for the palace to notice. He eats little. He speaks less. The old kingly habit of interrupting others has begun to melt away. When the sages speak, he does not cut across them. When priests advise another right, he nods. When his son is brought near, he looks at the boy longer than before. That child is Janamejaya, still young, not yet carrying the full iron weight of what is coming. He sees guards, lamps, worried faces, and his father seated amid chanting men. He does not understand why everyone is pretending to be calm so loudly. Parikshit blesses him. He gives instructions for the kingdom, not frantic ones, clear ones. He places the future where he can, because he can no longer place himself in it. You are there in the room when evening falls. The sandstone walls glow gold, then amber, then smoky brown. The chant continues. Somewhere below, kitchen smoke curls upward, carrying cumin and rice, and the faint sweetness of milk boiling over. Life keeps making dinner. Time keeps moving. The king closes his eyes and listens. On the fifth day, another traveler takes the road to Hastinapura. This one is Kashyapa, a healer of formidable knowledge, skilled in remedies against venom. He has heard the news. He knows of the curse, the king, the serpent named in it, and he believes his art is strong enough to meet even that danger. There is also no doubt the shining reward a grateful king would give. Healing and payment often travel together quite comfortably. He walks with purpose, staff in hand, herbs secured, mind sharp. Then, on that road, he meets a Brahmin. At least, that is what the stranger appears to be. The man's eyes are too steady. His calm is too cool. Dust does not seem to cling to him properly. And when he asks where Kashyapa is going, there is an edge in the politeness, like a knife wrapped in silk. Kashyapa answers honestly. He is going to save King Parikshit from Takshaka's venom. The stranger studies him. Then the mask thins. Takshaka reveals enough of himself for the meaning to land. Not fully, not with all the terror of his serpent majesty perhaps, but enough. Enough for the healer to know this is no roadside curiosity. This is the one named in the curse. What follows is quiet. That makes it more dangerous. Takshaka tests him first. Nearby stands a tree, rooted deep, leaves stirring in the afternoon heat. The Serpent King strikes. In a moment, the tree is overcome, its life blasted, its freshness gone, as though summer itself had been burned out of it. Then Kashyapa applies his knowledge, his mantras, his herbs, his concentrated skill, and before long, the tree lives again, leaf and branch restored. For an instant, the road holds its breath. So, the healer truly can do it. Takshaka sees this and changes tactics. Force is not the only weapon in the world. He speaks of wealth, riches greater than the king might give, gold enough to bend intention, jewels enough to quiet duty. Why go farther? Why trouble destiny? Take the gift, turn back. Kashyapa stands there in the road, with the heat pressing against his skin, with the smell of dust and sap in the air, with possibility on one side and payment on the other. Perhaps he weighs fate, perhaps greed, perhaps simple exhaustion. Men have turned around for smaller reasons. At last, he accepts. The healer, who might have stood between venom and king, turns back from the road. You can almost hear the unseen door closing. By the sixth day, the palace has become a floating island of ritual concentration. More sages arrive. The teachings deepen. Parikshit no longer asks whether the curse can be stopped. That question has worn itself out. Now he asks what a man should hold on to when everything else loosens. He asks what remains when rank, wealth, and the body itself begin stepping away one by one. The answers come like water poured steadily into a bronze vessel. He is told of Vishnu's names, of the mind fixed on what is eternal, of how fear shrinks when it stops pretending permanence belongs to us. He listens to accounts of ancient kings, mighty and fallen. He listens to tales of devotees who crossed dread by remembering the divine. The chamber grows gentler, not safe. Gentler, that is different. You sit near a pillar and watch the light move across the floor. Fine white ash circles the ritual fire. A fly buzzes against a shutter and is waved away. Outside the tower, guards patrol in measured loops. Their anklets and scabbards click softly. One priest coughs and sips water, then resumes recitation. The king's face, once drawn tight with resistance, now seems strangely bright. Not happy, clear. He begins to resemble his grandfather Arjuna, only in one thing now, the stare of a man looking beyond the immediate field. Meanwhile, Takshaka draws nearer. He does not travel alone forever. Serpents have their ways. Allies gather and scatter. Whispers go ahead of him. The roads into Hastinapura are watched, but watching is not the same as understanding. Men search bundles and wagons. They peer under ox carts. They prod rolled carpets. Good effort. Sincere effort. The kind that makes humans feel better while destiny smiles politely. By the 7th morning, the city wakes before dawn. No one needed to ring the bell twice. The eastern sky is pale as watered milk. Priests bathe and return with wet hair, fresh for the final stretch. Guards check spears, then check them again. The kitchens prepare simple food. Nobody wants heavy dishes on a day like this. Even the pigeons on the palace roof seem subdued, puffed against the cool hour before heat. Today. That word is everywhere. You climb with the attendants to the guarded chamber. The stone underfoot still holds some nighttime coolness. Lamps flicker in niches. Incense rises in blue threads. At the top, the king is already seated. He has bathed. He wears clean cloth. His jewels are fewer now. Gold matters less when time has narrowed into one day's width. Around him, the sages continue their recitation. The sound is like a river that has decided not to hurry. Parikshit does not look like prey. He looks like a man who has finally stopped pretending walls can save him. Still, the protections remain. They must. Guards on the stairs, guards below, guards in the courtyard. No strangers admitted casually. Every object inspected, every tray checked, every basket opened. Even gifts from well-wishers are held at distance until examined. The whole palace is vigilance made visible. And yet you can feel how delicate it all is. A dropped cup startles everyone. A priest reaching too quickly for a ladle earns 3 suspicious looks. A garland arrives, and 6 people lean back from it as if flowers have become morally unreliable. Hour by hour, the sun climbs. The heat comes with it. By midday, the upper chamber feels close, despite all efforts to keep it airy. The smell of sandalwood mixes with warm stone and human tension. Sweat shines at the temples of armored men. The king remains composed. He hears more sacred recitation. He asks for water once. He blesses those near him. He keeps his mind where the teachers have guided it. Below, the city waits. Some pray for the king to survive and embarrass the curse entirely. Some pray only that whatever comes, it comes cleanly. Some stare westward already, measuring how long until evening. Children are hushed. Merchants lose track of sums. Even gossip has become devotional. And on the road, or perhaps already nearer than the road, Takshaka comes to the final approach. Not as thunder, not as an army, as patience given form. The day leans forward. The palace breathes. The chants continue. The guards watch every visible entrance, which is unfortunately not the same as every entrance. By late afternoon, the light turns thicker, honey-colored on the stone. Shadows lengthen under the railings. A tiredness settles over everyone. That may be the cruelest part of a countdown. Terror cannot stay sharp forever. It frays, it droops. Men begin to think perhaps they have done enough. Perhaps the rites are working. Perhaps sunset will arrive. And all this strain will crack into relieved laughter. You can feel that temptation moving through the chamber, almost there, almost safe. And that is when protection begins to look thin, like tired men still holding spears against what has already chosen its path. Parikshit sits very still. The sages chant. The guards wait. Somewhere close now, hidden inside the ordinary shape of an offering, a gift, a harmless thing carried in human hands, the last movement of the curse prepares itself. The sun lowers, the air holds, and every heart in Hastinapura listens for a sound, too small at first to fear. And now we arrive at the hour everyone feared, when all the gods in the world are no match for one patient destiny. The seventh day is old already. It has been stretched, watched, counted, prayed over, until even time seems tired of itself. Inside the high chamber, where King Parikshit waits, the lamps have burned low and been trimmed and filled and lit again. The smoke of incense hangs in layers. Sandalwood, ghee, a dry sweetness from garlands that were fresh at dawn and are now beginning to wilt in the heat. The priests are still chanting. Their voices have gone rough around the edges. No one says it, but everyone hears it. By now, the sacred syllables sound less like a river and more like men rowing hard against one. Outside, guards stand at every stair, every arch, every terrace, every window screened with fine mesh. They have checked baskets, jars, bedding, gifts, cups, flowers, folded cloth, shoes, fruit, grain, and every hand that carried them. They have turned vigilance into a profession and fear into a routine. You can feel the weariness in the room, not the sleep-soft kind, the brittle kind, the kind that comes after too many hours, staring at nothing, waiting for the one thing that must not happen. And there, at the center of all this caution, sits Parikshit. He is no longer pacing. That was earlier. That belonged to the first day, maybe the third. Now he sits more quietly, the way men do when they have begun to understand that walls are only walls. The sacred teachings he has heard over these 7 days have left something changed in him. Not peace, exactly, but space, a loosening. He still lives in a king's body, but some part of his mind has already stepped back from the throne, from the jewel-bright court, from the stubborn idea that command can keep the world obedient. The sun has crossed too much sky. It leans west now, and every glance toward the light becomes dangerous. Sunset is no longer an idea. It is a door almost reached. Some of the younger guards have begun to believe the danger is passing. That is how the last stretch always works. The bowstring held too long, the shoulders ache, the mind whispers that perhaps the worst has gone elsewhere. Perhaps Takshaka, king of serpents, has been turned back by mantras, blocked by watchfires, delayed by fate itself. Perhaps all this terror will end in embarrassed relief and a great deal of exhausted sleeping. One guard even laughs, just once, under his breath, after finding nothing inside, yet another covered tray, except sweet cakes, sweating sugar in the heat. Poor man. He laughs like someone who has not yet learned that destiny enjoys small openings. The afternoon moves. Servants come and go under such scrutiny that each trip takes forever. Water is tested. Food is tasted. Offerings are sniffed, shaken, opened, poked with the tips of spears, then opened again because someone thought he saw movement that was only a folded leaf. There are flowers enough for 3 weddings and enough priests for a small kingdom. If safety could be assembled from effort alone, Parikshit would have lived 100 years. Far from the first checkpoint, beyond the outer corridors and the sweating ring of armed men, a group of ascetics approaches the palace. At least, that is what they seem to be. Their hair is matted, their robes are simple, their feet are dusty from the road. They carry fruit, kusha grass, flowers, and offerings proper for a king under vow and under threat. They come with the calm pace of holy men who know that all worldly arrangements are temporary anyway. No one loves searching ascetics. That is one of those awkward facts of palace life. Soldiers will overturn a merchant's basket with great enthusiasm. They will strip open a cloth bundle from a wandering peddler and feel righteous about it. But holy men come wrapped in taboo. Search too roughly and you invite scandal. Search too little and you invite catastrophe. Today they search. They do not dare not to. A captain gives the order. Bundles are opened. Fruit is turned over in hard hands. Garlands are shaken free. Kusha grass is spread on a cloth and checked for movement. One ascetic receives a glare so severe it might have dried milk. Another is made to wait while a guard taps every offering with the butt of his spear, as if snakes announce themselves with politeness. Nothing in the flowers, nothing in the grass, nothing in the fruit, but fruit. The captain frowns. He checks again. It is absurd by this point. A mango is a mango. A fig is a fig. A pomegranate is a pomegranate, though one suspicious guard eyes it as if every seed might be plotting. Still nothing. The ascetics are permitted inward, and among them moves Takshaka, not in his full terrible form, not with jeweled hood raised high or eyes like coals under rain clouds. No, he comes the way the most dangerous things often come, small enough to be overlooked, patient enough to wait, hidden in the plain offering. The Serpent King has left grandeur behind for stealth. Revenge does not always need thunder. Sometimes it prefers a basket. You can almost feel him before you see him. A tension in the air, a wrongness too fine to seize. The sort of feeling you get in a forest when birds go silent for no reason you can name. The gifts are carried through inner corridors. Marble underfoot, cool despite the heat. Brass lamps, painted pillars, doorways draped in white cloth marked with protective signs. Priests pause their chanting only long enough to inspect what has entered, then begin again. Voices frayed but stubborn. The king's attendants receive the offerings with reverence and exhaustion mixed together. Parikshit watches. He has spent 7 days being defended from the invisible. It changes a man. He no longer reaches quickly. He no longer assumes that harmless things are harmless. His eyes go to each basket, each covered tray, each folded cloth. He has become intimate with suspicion. And yet, the hour itself exerts pressure. Sunlight has softened. The long, bright cruelty of afternoon is passing into gold. You can see it on the floor, laid in bars through screened windows. Dust glows in it. A priest's hand trembles in it. A bronze bowl catches it and throws it back warm and red. The chamber breathes with one thought only. Almost sunset, almost safety, almost outlasting the curse. One by one, the offerings are inspected again before the king. Flowers, clean. Grass, clean. Fruit, whole, fragrant, ordinary. The sweet smell rises at once. Banana, mango, ripe fig, pomegranate, guava, a little sharpness of citrus. It is almost comic, after so much dread, that doom should arrive under the scent of an orchard. One attendant relaxes enough to make a face at the mountain of offerings, as if even disaster has decided to send snacks. Parikshit almost smiles. Almost. The baskets are set down. The priests murmur blessings over them. One servant cuts open a fruit and offers part for testing. Another peels back leaves around sweets. Guards watch from every angle with the rigid dignity of men determined to defeat a prophecy through posture. Then someone picks up a fruit. Small, unremarkable. The sort of fruit no one would look at twice. Its skin is split, perhaps by pressure, perhaps by ripeness, perhaps by a design more patient than either. The servant opens it farther with his thumb. Inside, curled in the hollow, where sweetness should have been undisturbed, is a tiny worm. At first, that is all it seems to be. Just a small, dark creature, no thicker than a string of black sesame, glistening faintly in the light. So ordinary, it almost insults everyone present. A worm, after 7 days of fear, after armies of guards and walls of mantra. You can feel the room teeter between relief and embarrassment. There is even a breath of laughter, thin, nervous, wrong. The servant holds the opened fruit away from himself. He glances at the king, unsure whether to discard it or crush the thing under a fingernail. A guard snorts softly. One priest keeps chanting, perhaps louder than before, as if sacred sound can cover foolishness. Parikshit looks at the creature. And maybe it is weariness, maybe resignation, maybe a king's last flare of defiance. Maybe he remembers the curse exactly as it was spoken, the 7th day, the serpent Takshaka, and something in him refuses to cower before anything so small. He says, with a dryness sharpened by the whole absurd week, that if this little worm is Takshaka, let it do what it came to do. That is the moment. The room hears the words. The air changes. You feel it first on your skin, a prickling at the back of the neck. The tiny thing in the fruit moves. Not like a worm now, not soft, not blind. It lifts itself with a purpose too old for such a shape. The dark line thickens. Segments become coils. The little glistening body lengthens, swells, rises. Someone drops a brass plate. The sound rings out and is swallowed by something larger. The creature grows. It spills from the fruit in a twist of living force. It thickens as if fed by the very fear in the room. One heartbeat and it is a worm. The next and it is a serpent. The next and no one in that chamber can pretend they do not know who has come. Takshaka. He rises in terrible splendor, hood spreading wide, eyes burning copper gold, scales dark as storm water and green as deep leaves after rain. The chamber that was built to exclude all snakes now contains the king of them, and no mesh, no guard line, no muttered blessing can explain how. Men stumble backward. A spear is thrust and misses. Another guard freezes completely, proving that courage and functioning knees are not always related. Priests cry out. One tries to continue the chant and loses the words halfway through. Another flings sacred water that flashes in the lamplight and falls uselessly to the floor. You are in the room with them now. You smell crushed fruit, lamp smoke, hot metal, fear. You hear silk scraping as attendants throw themselves aside. You feel the chamber's order break all at once, like a string of prayer beads snapped in a careless hand. Parikshit does not run. Where would he go? Across a guarded room, into a guarded corridor, into a world that has already counted down to this exact breath. He rises from his seat. For one instant, king and serpent face one another in the westering light. He is the last great heir of the Pandavas, grandson of Abhimanyu, saved in the womb by Krishna himself. Takshaka is old vengeance, given scales, memory, and a perfect hour. No army between them, no forest now, no gods descending, only the end of a curse reaching its mark. Takshaka strikes. Fast as a thought you wish you had not had. The bite lands, and with it comes something more than venom. Fire seems to run with it. Not flame from a torch, not the warm, clean flame of ritual, but a fierce, consuming brightness, serpent-born and curse-fed. It flashes around the king like sudden summer lightning finding dry wood. Parikshit reels. The chamber bursts into chaos. Guards rush in too late. Spears slash air. Priests call on every name they know. Servants throw cloth, water, anything at all, as though panic were a useful weapon. But Takshaka's work is already done. The poison is no common poison. It moves like destiny through the veins of the moment. The king's ornaments blaze in the fierce light. His garments catch the glow. For an instant he seems less like a man falling and more like a royal standard struck by the sun itself. Then he goes down, not broken in any ugly way, not dragged into the grotesque. He falls as great things fall in old epics, with shock, with finality, with the whole room refusing to believe what it has seen until it is already over. The priests stop chanting. That may be the strangest part. After 7 days of uninterrupted sound, after so many mantras woven like walls around him, the sudden silence hits harder than any cry. It is as if the entire palace takes one enormous breath and cannot release it. Takshaka coils above the fallen king. For a heartbeat or two, he is vast, radiant, dreadful. Then he is motion again. Smoke, speed, serpent grace, where no serpent should be. Men lunge. He slips beyond them as water slips past grasping hands. Some say he rose through the air. Some say he vanished into shadow. Some say flame itself carried him. What matters is simpler. He came in, he struck, he was gone, and all the effort of 7 days lies stunned around a silent throne. Outside, the palace does not yet understand. The sun is still not fully down. Courtyards glow amber. Pigeons flutter from eaves. Somewhere a conch sounds for the evening rite, innocent as ever. In kitchens, rice is being lifted from pots. In guard stations, tired men still tell each other they only have a little longer to hold. The city continues for several breaths, as if its king still lives. Then the cry begins. It starts in the inner chamber with one shattered voice, then another, then running feet, then a captain shouting for physicians who will arrive to discover that this is no work for them, then women wailing in distant apartments, then horns, then confusion spreading room by room, corridor by corridor, stair by stair. Parikshit has fallen. Takshaka has done it. The curse has ripened. You can almost watch the news move, like wind through fabric. A whisper at one doorway becomes a gasp at the next, then a cry in the next hall. then full grief in the courtyards below. The guards who spent a week defending every entrance now stare at each other with the stricken look of men who have been defeated by something that never meant to fight them directly. A fruit basket, a tiny creature, that was enough. Inside the chamber, the light changes further. Sunset has nearly come now, and the western glow rests on the floor beside the king's still form. The broken fruit lies open, sticky and forgotten. A brass plate spins once more where it had rolled, then settles flat with a final little hum. Incense continues to burn, because incense knows nothing of kings. Its thread of smoke rises steadily into the darkening air. The priests gather themselves enough to move. Hands shake as they prepare rites. Water is brought. Lamps are raised. Sacred words return in softer tones, no longer defensive now, no longer used as a wall, but as a path. The men who spent all day trying to prevent an ending now must help the soul meet it. That is how quickly life changes in palaces. One moment strategy, the next ritual. One moment fear of the future, the next arrangements for the dead. And somewhere beyond walls and watchfires, beyond the roads and the fading sky, Takshaka moves away from Hastinapura. The Serpent King has kept the curse. He has answered old fire with new fire. He has touched the line of the Pandavas at its farthest surviving branch and left it scorched. Night begins to gather. The first stars are not yet visible, but the blue deepens above the city. Heat lifts slowly from stone. The palace, so tense all week, now feels hollowed out. People speak in hushed bursts, as if loud voices might bring the serpent back. The guarded doors stand open to evening. Their precautions look theatrical now, abandoned props after the play has ended. And you stand there in that dim chamber, hearing what remains, not battle, not chanting, not commands, only the low crackle of disturbed lamps, the rustle of robes, the soft clink of ritual vessels, grief trying to stay formal and failing. And beneath it all, the long stunned quiet that follows when the impossible has happened exactly as foretold. The sun slips down, too late to save him, right on time for destiny. But one death in the Mahabharata is never only one death. The ember rolls forward into another generation. Parikshit is gone. The chamber still smells of ghee lamps, sandalwood, and the sharp, strange trace left behind by serpent fire. Priests who had chanted for 7 days now sit in stunned silence. Guards stare at the floor as if stone itself has betrayed them. Outside, the corridors of the palace fill with running feet, then weeping, then the low thunder of news spreading from mouth to mouth. The king has fallen, the curse has flowered. And Hastinapura, old survivor of older disasters, must learn once more how to breathe after shock. You can feel that hour if you stand there long enough. The evening light is red on the pillars. Smoke from the lamps curls upward in thin blue threads. Somewhere in the women's quarters, someone begins to cry openly, no longer trying to be dignified about it. Grief does that. It tears neatness apart. And in another room, a child is brought forward. Janamejaya, not yet the fierce sacrificer, not yet the king who will try to drag an entire serpent race into fire. For now, he is only a son, handed a grief too large for his hands. His father is gone. The last direct heir of the Pandavas has slipped away under a curse and a fang. The old line, already stretched thin by war, exile, vows, and ash, narrows even further. Crowns always look too heavy on the young. The court gathers around him with hollow faces. Ministers speak carefully. Priests recite what must be recited. Elders steady the kingdom with ritual, because ritual is what people reach for when the heart refuses order. Water is poured, mantras move through the air. The throne does not remain empty long, because kingdoms fear emptiness almost as much as they fear serpents. So Janamejaya is raised up, but he inherits more than a seat. He inherits a wound. Time passes, not wildly, quietly. The seasons turn over Hastinapura. Monsoon rain darkens the palace courtyards. Then winter comes with pale mornings and wool shawls. Then summer again, dry and bright, with dust on the roads and the smell of hot stone rising by noon. The boy grows, his shoulders broaden, his jaw hardens. The old grief does not leave. It learns how to sit still. You have seen this kind of grief before. It waits politely for years, then stands up all at once. Janamejaya hears again and again how his father fell. He hears of the curse spoken by the sage's son. He hears of the fruit basket. He hears of the tiny worm that was no worm. And above all, he hears the name that glitters and coils through every telling. Takshaka, the serpent king, the hidden one, the old enemy from an older fire. A name like that does not stay small. In the palace halls, bards speak of the Kuru line by lamplight. They begin with kings so ancient, they almost sound like trees. They pass through Shantanu and Ganga, Bhishma with his terrible vow, Pandu in the forest, the 5 brothers, the war, the ashes, the child saved in the womb, and then, at last, Parikshit. Each name is polished by repetition. Each sorrow becomes part of the royal breath. And then Takshaka enters the recitation. Not as a mere snake in the grass, never that. He's remembered with the weight of old dread, hooded, patient, gold-eyed in the roots of the world. A king below the earth, where cool jeweled halls lie far from the heat of men. A survivor of Khandava's burning, a bearer of memory so old it tastes of smoke. When people speak his name at night, voices lower without meaning to. You can almost hear it, the soft rustle of silk, the pop of oil in the lamps, the distant night call of some bird beyond the walls. And in between, that name, Takshaka. It slides through the room like something alive. Janamejaya grows up inside that sound. At first he wants justice. That is the clean word for it. Noble, upright, fit for a king. But grief rarely stays in clean words. Justice warms, it darkens, it begins to ask for more. If one serpent king took his father, why should the serpent race be left in peace? If poison struck the throne, why should poison remain under root and stone? And so the vow begins to form, not in one dramatic flash, more slowly than that. A priest mentions the proper rites for vengeance. An elder remembers ancient enmities. A king sits awake too late. A fire is imagined, then planned, then fed. The serpent sacrifice is coming. Far away, beneath forest mounds and riverbanks, in caverns cool as moonlit wells, that rumor begins to move too. Nagas hear it in hidden courts. They hear that Janamejaya, son of Parikshit, will summon Brahmins and sacred flame. He will call upon chants so powerful that serpents will be dragged from their holes, their coils, their secret palaces, and pulled helpless through the air toward the fire. Revenge has a very busy imagination, and Takshaka hears. Maybe he hears it in Indra's court, maybe in his own jeweled chamber, where torchlight strikes polished stone and makes it look wet as river skin. Maybe from a scout rising breathless from some root-dark tunnel. However it comes, it comes. The sun is calling back to the farther's end. The ember is becoming a blaze. You stand for a moment between those worlds. Above, the palaces of men. High walls, carved beams, white parasols, horses in the stables. conch shells at dawn. Below, the old serpent realms, cool chambers, gem-lit pillars, the hush of scaled bodies moving over stone. Ancient kings who remember things buried deeper than human memory likes to travel. Neither world is ever as separate as it pretends. Roots crack courtyards, snakes sleep beneath sacrificial altars, rain falls on temple roof and anthill alike. This is how the old world breathes, in layers. Years later, when Dhanamajaya's great rite flares to life, the fire will leap and the chants will pull, and serpents will begin to fall through the sky like dark cords flung from the clouds. The air itself will seem to tighten. Priests will sweat beside the blaze. The king will sit rigid with inherited fury. Takshaka himself will seek refuge high above, near Indra, while the ritual strains upward to seize him. But that comes in time. For now, let the night settle over Hastinapura. Parikshit has been mourned. The pyres have cooled. Janamajaya sleeps somewhere behind guarded doors, one hand still curled as children's hands do, though a kingdom already presses around him. In the outer halls, the last attendants move softly with bronze trays, pinching out lamps one by one. The smell of smoke and lotus oil hangs low in the air. In the courtyards, moonlight gathers in the stone basins. In the old archives, names are copied again onto palm leaf. In the temples, bells ring once and then go quiet. And beyond all of it, outside walls and roads and memory-polished thrones, the earth remains full of hidden movement. Serpents slide through tree roots, wet from night dew. They pass through ruined halls where dynasties once boasted. They rest in the cool hollows of riverbanks. They vanish beneath shrines. They lift their heads at sounds no human hears. Takshaka remains there too, in fear, in legend, in warning, in the long memory of flame answered by flame. Empires sleep heavily, they always do, draped in banners, guarded by soldiers, soothed by priests, convinced their walls are the edge of the world. But under the flagstones, under the roots, under the old burned places where forests once stood, another kingdom keeps its watch. And if the night is still enough, if the lamps burn low enough, if the wind pauses in the neem trees beyond the palace, you can almost feel it below everything human. Cool, coiled, patient, awake. So after all of that, we can finally step back for a moment and sit with what it meant. First, that a war does not end when the drums stop. Kurukshetra ended. The conches fell silent. The great heroes were gone. Ash settled on the plain. And still the old fire kept traveling forward, hidden in people, hidden in memory, hidden in the consequences nobody could call back. Parikshit was born into that echo. He did not start the war. He did not burn Khandava. He did not raise a bow against the Nagas. He arrived afterward, like a child walking into a room where everyone has already argued and left the furniture broken. That is part of the sadness here. In the Mahabharata, children inherit unfinished storms, and Takshaka does too. When you look at him that way, he stops being just a monster arriving for one dramatic bite. He becomes something older, a wound with a crown, a memory that learned patience. That matters, because this part of the tale is not only about one king insulting one sage and one serpent carrying out one curse. It is about karma ripening across generations, not karma in the small, childish way people sometimes imagine it, as if the world is keeping a neat little scorecard. It is larger than that. Karma is the web of action and consequence that keeps moving long after the hand that started it is dust. Arjuna and Krishna burned Khandava. Creatures fled, many did not. Takshaka's world was marked by that blaze. Years passed. A dynasty rose, ruled, and told itself it had moved on. But karma had not vanished. It was waiting for the right season. Then came Parikshit in the forest. Hot, thirsty, proud, tired, and suddenly foolish. And that is another thing this tale wants you to remember. Enormous ruin can enter through a very small crack. Not a battle, not an army, not some grand and thunderous decision announced under banners, a moment of temper, a dead snake lifted in irritation, a humiliated sage's son speaking in anger, a curse sent out into the world. That is how quickly things turn. Dharma can be that delicate. Dharma is often called duty, and that is true, but it is more than duty. It is the right holding of yourself inside the world, the fitting action, the thing that keeps order from slipping. A king has dharma, a sage has dharma, a son has dharma. Even rage has a boundary it should not cross. Parikshit failed his dharma when he mocked stillness because his own mind was burning. The young ascetic failed his dharma when he let anger rush ahead of wisdom. Takshaka, too, moves inside this difficult space. He is carrying vengeance, yes, but he is also carrying an old account. The world never settled. That is why the tale feels so heavy and so true. Almost no one in it is simple, and that's the way this story moves. It does not give you a clean world where the good stay pure and the wicked wear signs around their necks. It gives you people bound in threads they did not spin alone. It gives you noble men who make terrible choices in one heated breath. It gives you wounded beings who become instruments of fate. It gives you the long ache of actions returning. You can feel it all through Parikshit's final week. He was still a king. He had gods, priests, walls, mantras, watchtowers, healers. He did everything power knows how to do. He sealed the doors. He scanned the gifts. He tried to command the shape of his own ending, and none of it held. That is where Maya enters the tale. Maya is not just illusion in the cheap sense, not simply something fake. It is the spell of appearances, the surface of things that makes us believe we are more secure, more separate, more in control than we really are. A palace can feel permanent. A throne can feel solid. A guarded chamber can feel safe enough to bargain with destiny. But the fruit opens anyway. The tiny creature is there anyway. The end enters through the smallest space. That is Maya falling away. For a king, that is a hard truth. For anyone, really. You can stack stone on stone, place men at every gate, speak orders until your throat dries out, and still you remain human beneath it all. Time reaches everyone. Consequence reaches everyone. Even the heir of the Pandavas cannot order the universe to stand down. And yet, this section of the Mahabharata is not hopeless. That is important too, because Parikshit changes during those 7 days. He begins in fear and defense. He moves slowly toward listening, toward sacred teaching, toward acceptance. The walls fail, but something inside him softens. That softening matters more than the gods. The tale is saying that while you cannot always stop the fruit from arriving, you can still choose how to meet the sunset. That is a very Hindu kind of consolation, not denial, not fantasy, not a promise that devotion means nothing painful will happen. Something steadier than that. Act rightly, see clearly, loosen your grip, understand that kingship, strength, lineage, and even grief belong to the moving world. What lasts is deeper. Takshaka, then, is not merely a villain slithering in from the margins to strike a righteous king. He is part of the same moral universe as everyone else in this tale. He is what happens when hurt is carried forward instead of healed. He is the return of neglected consequence. He is the old forest fire coming back in another form. And the king is not merely a victim. He is also an inheritor, a ruler, a man capable of disrespect, fear, and finally awakening. So the Mahabharata does not end when the war ends, because human action does not stop at the edge of one battlefield. It keeps echoing through children, kingdoms, habits, tempers, vows, and wounds. One generation hands the next not only crowns and weapons, but unfinished karma. That is why Janamejaya matters at the edge of this tale. He is not just a footnote after Parikshit's death. He is the next vessel for the same fire. His father's death becomes his inheritance. Takshaka's bite becomes a story told over and over until grief hardens into purpose. And before long, the son begins preparing a fire of his own. That is how old wounds keep traveling when nobody knows how to lay them down. Khandava burns. Takshaka remembers. Parikshit falls. Janamejaya vows revenge. The shape changes, but the heat keeps moving from hand to hand. That is the real weight of Takshaka. He is memory with fangs. He is the reminder that nothing is ever truly buried if it was never faced. And still, the tale offers closure. It says that consequence is real, but so is understanding. It says that dharma can be broken in a moment, yet recognized again before the end. It says that Maya makes us cling to walls, titles, and protections, but wisdom gently loosens the hand. It says that karma is not cruelty. It is continuity, the world remembering what was done within it. By the time Parikshit's final hour comes, the deepest teaching is already there. Not in the bite itself, not in the palace, not even in Takshaka's triumph. It is in the strange calm that begins when a human being stops arguing with truth. That is what all of this has been carrying toward, not just the fall of a king, the clearing of the air after generations of smoke. And when you hold the tale that way, it settles. The serpent has his place, the king has his place, the old war has its shadow, the curse fulfills itself. The lesson arrives softly at last. What we do remains. What we refuse to heal returns. What we cling to passes. And what we learn, if we learn in time, can make even the final sunset gentle. So that is where the story leaves us. Not with a king simply punished, and not with a serpent simply feared. It leaves us with a world where actions travel farther than we do, where old wounds ask to be faced, and where wisdom sometimes arrives only when pride has burned itself out. By the end, Parikshit cannot stop the bite, but he can stop pretending he is more permanent than he is. He can listen, he can loosen his grip, he can meet the last evening with more clarity than he met the hot afternoon in the forest. And that is the strange mercy in this tale. The outer ending is hard. The inner ending is gentler. The curse lands. The body falls. But understanding comes too. In a story full of smoke, inherited grief, and consequences carried across generations, that understanding is the one cool thing left in the room. The lamps burn lower. The palace stones release the day's last heat. Outside the walls, night gathers over Hastinapura, softening the roofs, the courtyards, the guarded gates, the roads where messengers once ran with terrible news. The shouting is gone now. So are the hurried footsteps. So are the chants that tried to hold death outside the room. Only the quiet remains. You can feel it beneath the flagstones, beneath the roots of old trees, beneath the ashes of forests long burned and kingdoms long repaired. Memory does not vanish just because the lamps are put out. It settles, it waits, it becomes part of the ground. Somewhere in the dark, the Ganga moves under moonlight. Somewhere below root and stone, hidden waters slip through jeweled chambers. Somewhere in the sleeping city, a child turns in dreams beneath the weight of a name he has only begun to understand. And far beneath every palace, every shrine, every road where kings believe themselves safe, the old world keeps breathing, cool, coiled, patient, awake. The final lamp flickers once, then steadies, and the night holds what it remembers.